Most people crossing the border are fleeing violence and desperate situations. They're not criminals. So given that, it is dehumanizing for them to be shackled and handcuffed and treated inhumanely. And I can say that because I've been there. I've witnessed these flights happen. I've witnessed people get off the buses, onto the airplane, off the airplane, onto the buses. The way they're being petted down, the way they have the women bend over and shake their hair out because they could potentially have something dangerous in their hair. It's unacceptable. I'm here to invite y'all to come and witness these flights happening. Witness the dehumanization of our community. City Manager Moore knows when these flights are happening. He calls people and he lets them know when it's happening. Y'all can go witness this for yourself and see how poorly and awful they're treating our community. Thank you.
Robert Salas.
All right, my name is Robert Salas. I am from YAKIMA, District 1. I am here on the behalf of the concerned community members regarding the resolution of ICE using our local air terminal to continue their inhumane agenda after King County was able to stop this successfully. By inhumane, I mean the way that the detainees are being transported. Like Naomi said, they are being shackled, patted down. There's a lot of safety concerns when they are boarding the airplane. They are not allowed to hold on to the rails. So that's a big concern to us. I must imagine you guys have seen this in footage, but it does not compare to physically being there and experiencing the raw emotion of our brothers and sisters that are detained. So once again, I invite you guys to come witness. Before you decide that you are too busy to attend, I'd like to thank City Manager Liv Moore and City Council Member Funk for personally attending these. Your community sees your efforts to being there, and we see your efforts to comfort us as a community. So, thank you.
Thank you. Selena Barajas. If you'd state your name, city of residence.
Hi, I'm Selena Barajas, and I'm from Yakima. So I am from District 1. I'm here to represent the people who fear to have their voice heard. Before I say this in behalf of our community, I want to say that my family has been
Take your time. It's fine.
has been personally victimized by ICE. Particularly my father, who was detained and placed under arrest in the Tacoma Detention Center. The protocols that were used were inhumane, and being in this detention center decreased my dad's health extremely, to the point where after he was deported, he died alone in Mexico. There are people in this community who are going through the same emotional distress as my family and I. And that's why, as a person, as a daughter of a person who's been through this, I beg you guys to please consider stopping this, because it's painful. It's painful because we fear the separation. We feel like we're not protected, and it's just inhumane the way they're treated, the way they're handcuffed and shackled and patted down. It's really sad. I invite you guys to come see it, because it makes your heart hurt. It made my heart hurt, because those people on those planes and on those buses, I see my dad in those people, and these are humans. So please consider better in taking this off because it's very real and hurting the people in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Jenny Wright.
Hi, my name is Janie Wright. I'm a member of the Yakima community, and I'm here today speaking on behalf of the Yakima Immigration Response Network. Dear Council,
Sorry
I'm
to
sorry.
interrupt. Is she asking for additional time on behalf of the group?
Do you have a group with you?
yes, I'm speaking on behalf of the group.
Then we will be allocating
We,
5 minutes.
we give you 5 minutes for
Okay.
a group. Thank you
Okay.
for pointing that out. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. The Yakima Immigrant Response Network and members of the community come before you today to ask that the City Council adopt a resolution in response to the recent passage of the Keep Washington Working Act, the recent decision by Immigration and Customs Enforcement to use the Yakima Airport to transport people in immigration enforcement custody, and the ever-escalating threat of immigration enforcement in the community, including the recent no-match SSI letters that have been sent out to hundreds of employers. We respectfully request that the City of Yakima adopt a resolution calling for the following. Whereas Yakima is a community mostly made up of immigrants from all over the world, all of us thriving on land that was originally inhabited by the Yakima Nation. Whereas our economy depends on the many contributions of immigrants to our agricultural, hospitality, and industrial sectors. Whereas our city's cultural life is enhanced by its many immigrant communities. Whereas all immigrants are people worthy of human rights, deserving of dignity and respect, and represented by officials, by their elected officials. Whereas city council members have a public responsibility to ensure that civil rights and human dignity are respected in our community. Whereas the city of Yakima has spent significant public resources to repair, uphold, and improve the reputation of the city. Therefore, the city of Yakima must always remain a welcoming city for immigrants, that the city does not discriminate in any services on the basis of immigration status, that police and civil authorities will always serve the public regardless of national origin or immigration status. Whereas the city acknowledges that the use of the Yakima Airport by Immigration and Customs Enforcement will create fear in the community and potentially damage our community's reputation. Therefore, it be resolved that Immigration and Customs Enforcement is not welcome to operate out of Yakima Airport for the purposes of transporting detained immigrants. City staff shall work to ensure that all city agencies review their policies and practices to comply with the Keep Washington Working Act. City staff will review all contracts, leases, and intergovernmental agreements to adhere to the Keep Washington Working Act. City staff are directed to minimize cooperation with the transportation of immigration detainees, that the city will ensure that future contracts with operators at Yakima Airport and other public facilities allow the city to stop service to entities that are detrimental to the health, safety, and values of the Yakima community. That all provisions of this resolution are to be read in compliance with the law and the city's current contractual obligations. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wright, do you have a copy of that? Could you give?
That's what she handed out.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Oh, we've got it. Thank you, Mary. Would anyone else like to speak? You still have some time.
Or introduce someone.
Would you like to introduce yourselves? Okay.
I'm Martha Rickey. I'm a member of the Yakima Response Network.
Could you speak into the microphone, please?
My name is Martha Rickey. I'm a member of the Yakima Immigrant Response Network, and I'm here supporting this draft resolution.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Jean Ragland, other than Yakima, Washington. I am also here in supporting the Yakima Immigrant Response Network in their efforts to stop ICE from detaining immigrants for deportation.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Roman, I'm sorry. Roman, I'm not going to be able to, I don't even want to try. If you would please come to the podium.
My name
repeat
is
your
Roman Kilinkaridis. It's a Greek last name. So today I'm here. Got a couple questions for you. First, I want to start with the reserve program for our police department. My understanding is our officers need help. I don't know if you can answer my question. Do you know how many openings we have, Mr. Moore?
The last I checked, it was 14.
14? Can you answer why don't we have the reserve program anymore while other cities around the valley?
Roman, it's not a question and answer. It's not a Q&A. If
Okay.
you have a statement, please go ahead and make it.
Okay. All right. Yes. So my second question,
Roman,
hopefully,
if you'd like to give Roman your card.
have, yeah.
Oh, you have? All right. Then you can address your questions to him in an email, perhaps.
okay.
And if you'd like to, then you can have that copy to the council members.
Okay. So my second question, I thought I'm gonna get answers, but that's okay. I just wanna ask a couple questions. Why eliminating the time to 1 minute?
We'll have
I'm not trying to be a negative and
No,
create
we'll have
issues.
information on that. It's not being eliminated to 1 minute, but go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And then wanna ask Ms. Gutierrez, name Mike Bastinelli.
What?
You remember recall his name?
He's a city employee.
He is or he was?
He was the city
was?
employee. Yeah.
Okay. I just can't understand why we eliminate such an important position.
Again, it's
I know, I understand. I'm not expecting to get an answer, but it's just,
If you have a comment to make about that, then go ahead and.
yeah, I believe Mr. Bastinelli, he was doing a fantastic job by keeping us informed. And I just can't understand why eliminating such an important position, while right now we just don't know what's going on with the city.
Well, and you do have a right to get your questions answered, and again, so email the
I will definitely do
city
that.
manager,
Thank you.
and then you can ask to have the council included on that, so we can make sure you get responded to.
And then my last question is, my understanding is some people cannot make it to the city councils, right? So we uploading the whole city council meeting on the website, right? I did check online and I don't see the whole city council meeting on the website for some reason.
That's true.
Is it? Go ahead.
We can get those answers for you.
You were trying to say something.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a question I think we've all talked about. There's some technical difficulties happening right now, but they're being uploaded still.
It's a server issue that we've had to send it back to get the part.
And we're not happy about it either.
It's just, okay, thank you. I
Thank
guess
you.
my time is
Next is Brandy Schwartz. Brandy? Brandy, you had a group with, oh, yes you do. So that means that you will have 5 minutes if you want to take that time.
I timed myself originally and then I made tweaks, so
Okay.
extra time is appreciated.
And all I ask is that you don't block the exit aisle. If you could all kind of come in.
Shuffle in behind Brandy.
Yeah. Gosh, there's some familiar faces here.
Some of
Thank
us
you.
have become regulars, others are new.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Go ahead and begin.
Okay, so good evening, council members. My name is Brandy Schwartz. I'm the president for the Yakima Valley Landlord Association. I'm here today to introduce our organization. First, the YVLA has 682 members, just confirmed this morning, who own and manage residential rental property here in Yakima County. We're established in 1975 with the goal to improve and maintain good standards in the management of residential rental property through education and support of our members. There's a lot of laws, a lot of rules. We want to make sure that our landlords know what they need to be doing and how they can do it. There are a variety of laws and ordinances that affect the landlords, such as the Washington State Landlord Tenant Act, Federal Fair Housing, county and city ordinances, local code requirements, just to name a few. So we do our best to keep our members updated of any changes that are made. Second, the YVLA wants a safe and successful community. So we have worked together with other programs and events that contribute to that success. One of those programs is the crime-free rental housing program that we worked with the Yakima Police Department to implement that. The goal of that program is to create a safer and more stable living environment here in Yakima. So the program's been very successful for landlords and for the police department because we've been able to work together to learn the best way to provide safe rental housing, spot and report illegal activities, and then remove those responsible for the criminal activities to improve the overall safety of the neighborhood. So this is an event the YVLA still co-sponsors with the Yakima Police Department. Also, every fall, the YVLA holds a candidate forum. We invite all candidates who are running for an elected position, like within or affecting the Yakima County. So we believe the community benefits when we can bring these candidates together with our community members so they can talk, listen, and leave better informed about who the candidates are and then what the issues are in those communities. So those are just two examples of the Yakima Valley Landlord Association getting involved in our community, supporting those who are taking care of our community, and then participating in the discussions where we can provide our years of experience and practical information to those concerns. So finally, as an organization, we have hundreds of members, decades of experience, and we would be a great resource for the council and city staff members who are discussing many housing-related issues. Landlords and managers can offer insights and hands-on experience to the important topics of affordable housing, potential minimum maintenance code or program that's been talked about, and then addressing vacant and abandoned buildings. We have excellent experience with remodeling, fixing, maintaining, all the things that would be valuable information as these items are being discussed. And currently, we have several board members and members who would be willing and able to offer their time to address housing in the Valley, and then also addressing the housing that is not meeting the state and local laws of habitability. So just want to introduce ourselves and say we are here to help. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Before you leave them, I would suggest our city clerk has a list in her office, as do we at the front desk, of organizations, or I should say committees, that have vacancies that many of you could be a great resource to.
Excellent.
And
All right,
we
thank
would
you
welcome your participation.
Excellent. Thank you. See you too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming, too.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. That's good. Yes, you may.
All right, next is Giovanni Severino. Please repeat your name and the city of residence.
Exactly how you said it, Giovanni Severino, or Giovanni Severino,
Okay.
and from District 5. So my name is Giovanni Severino, and I'm a citizen of Yakima, a concerned citizen now, after I read the reports that ICE is using our airport. I'm fully aware that the airport is being funded locally through our taxes, and the city has some power to say whether or not ICE should or should not be present in our community. And as you've heard before from the previous people before me, it's causing a lot of fear. It's causing a lot of fear in me and my family and other people that I know. My family doesn't want to even drive by the airport anymore. Like, I tried to explain to them that it's, don't be scared, Dad's scared, but they can't. They can't help it, and other people can't help it. And I think that if our community truly is meant to be safe, and if that's the goal that we want to have in Yakima, then I urge that the city council supports the resolution that was suggested earlier today, where we ensure the protection of all the individuals of Yakima and not allow the fear to prevent them from going to work, from driving to certain areas, or from even stepping outside their homes. It's important that we take a stand against ICE and not allow them to be present here in the city of Yakima. Thank you.
Thank you. May I
Shut it down!
All right. That's enough. All right, that's enough. I was going to, and I will continue to say, that I believe this is going to be discussed under other business. I would invite those who are interested to stay and listen to that discussion, if you can do so in an orderly and polite manner. Jean Ragland.
Again. My first, Jean Ragland, Yakima. My first trot up here was to give you a nay. This trot up here is to give you a big yay. And each time I've been up here at this podium, I've always prefaced my little speech with, when I came to Yakima, I was worried, because I come from a totally different cultural area of the state. I was worried that the LGBT community in Yakima would not be rich. We would not have the richness of the culture that we had from where I came from. I left many, many friends in the LGBTQ community, and I miss them. I want to thank you so much for recognizing the community and welcoming the community, and I hope you continue to do so and even expand on your welcome by normalizing this part of our community that is so important to a vital, vibrant community that Yakima, I feel is coming to be. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Next on the agenda, we have no other comments. Next on the agenda under department items is item 8, a presentation on the Fire Systems Record Management Program. Fire Code Inspectors Tony Doan and Jay DeLoza will introduce this item.
Deputy Chief Reed will offer a few
Thank you.
remarks to get it
Thank
started.
Good evening, Council. See you, Mayor. Mr. Moore, how you doing? Tonight we're going to talk about our record system management and a concept that we would like to introduce you to. Tony and Jay have done a lot of work on this. The process here is to enhance our records management of a specific protection system or systems. It's a proactive system that we want to implement. So with that being said, I'm just going to step to the side. I'll be here if there's any questions, and I'll turn it over to Inspector Doan. Thank you.
Thank you, Council, for having us here tonight. This gives us a rare opportunity to go over some detailed information within our Fire Code Inspection Division, something that we don't get to do often with Council especially, so thank you for that. We're going to be detailing our Fire System Records Management Program. And within this slide, if you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to interrupt. We'll also entertain some of that at the end of the slide as well. So as far as slide contents and what we're going to be going over, this is a brief detail of that. As far as we're going to go over our program details and do our best to explain this and what exactly is involved in what we're doing with our fire records management program. We're going to go over the benefits, and then we're going to get into our workload and financial impact of the city. And then we'll talk about cost recovery, possible revenue generation, and what surrounding jurisdictions are doing. So let's pretend like Chief Reed is a local business owner, and he owns a building in town where he operates his business out of. Within this business, he has a fire alarm system, okay? The fire code, which is adopted by the state of Washington, requires a third-party inspector to come out and fill out an inspection report. And this is basically a confidence report that says that this fire protection system is working properly, and they require that on an annual or 6-month basis, depending on what code or standard it falls under. At which time they're required to submit that to the authority having jurisdiction, in which case is our Fire Code Inspection Division, for our review. This allows us to review these systems for any deficiencies, or if there aren't any, then we record it as such and say that the system is working properly. This verifies that the systems in town that are required in these buildings are working properly, and not only our business owners and their properties are safe, but also the residents going in them, as well as our emergency responders who have to respond to them. So this slide here goes into some of the details of that program, kind of like I did before. In an effort not to go too long-winded, I'm going to skip over this one, but it does go into a little more detail. And if you really want to get into the nuts and bolts of this and the multiple layers, Appendix A in the packet has quite a bit of information in there that we actually send out to these third-party companies explaining why we're doing what we're doing. So on to the benefits and why we're doing what we're doing. We started this portion of the Fire Code Inspection Program starting in the year 2014. Since then, we have reviewed over 1,000 individual hazards that has prevented a system from working properly, which has allowed us to go follow up on those and make sure that those deficiencies are repaired in a timely manner. And this has allowed businesses to stay in business longer since those systems are working. It's allowed a safer environment, and it's also allowed our emergency responders to arrive to a scene that is more safe, as well as to operate at a more efficient level. Also, another thing that that really needs to be mentioned here is during our Washington State Survey and Rating Bureau, which gives us a rating that the citizens benefit from at an insurance rate level, this is a specific item that we are graded on within that rating. At the conclusion of March of 18, they had just finished up their latest rating, and we were awarded 100% credit in this area. So that's something to be very commendable. As far as workload goes, number of reports reviewed, I'm not going to get into each individual system, but this is just a list of the different types of fire protection systems that we would review reports on, which are required by the state adopted code. As you can see, our total number down at the bottom is over 4,000. So between three fire code inspectors, we're reviewing over 4,000 reports every year, and that workload is divided up between the three of us. So now we get into our financial impact, which this starts to really get into why we're here tonight. The 4,200 reports reviewed per year, we have an approximate review time of 15 minutes to process one report. This report can take a minute to review, it can take 15 minutes to review, and it may require us to go out and do a follow-up inspection that involves us being on site, taking a look at the work to repair these deficiencies, and that's where that 15 minutes per report number is coming from. That's equivalent to about 1,000 hours of work per year that's divided again between the three inspectors. So looking at cost recovery options, back in 2017, Council decided to put together a fee schedule that helped recover costs for work being done by the three fire code inspectors. Included in the cost recovery was annual fire code inspections, which is a large portion of what we do, compliance re-inspections, which means we find a hazard, we come back to follow up on that to make sure that it's been fixed or abated. And then we also covered event inspections within our fee schedule. So one thing it doesn't include is the cost recovery for this fire systems record management program. So we're proposing a per report fee for all inspection reports submitted and reviewed. As far as possible revenue goes, we'd be proposing a $15 per report fee, and at around 4,000 reports a year, that possible annual revenue generated would be $60,000. As with anything we've done within the Fire Code Inspection Division, we instantly come up with obvious and clear questions that we need answers to. And three that came up that we really thought needed to be answered right away is who pays the fee, what businesses do these impact, and also we like to see what other jurisdictions are doing to see where we fall in line as a jurisdiction and if we're out of line in that regard. So who pays the fee? We would be invoicing the third-party company that's required to do that work. So right now how it works is if a third-party company goes out and does that inspection, they submit a copy of that report to us. We would review it, and then they would be the ones who are charged that $15 report. What they decide to do with that afterwards, whether that's incur the cost themselves, raise prices, pass it on to the customer, that would be up to them. But we would be working with just the third-party companies, not each individual business, as far as passing that on directly to them. Now, what businesses do these impact? Let's say that the company does say, we're going to pass this on to the business owner, this $15 per report fee. of the 5,000 different occupancies that we currently inspect within the city of Yakima, 25% of them contain these fire protection systems, meaning that the revenue generated from this would be generated from that 25%, and the whole lot would not be affected by that. And then
Go ahead. I think we have some questions.
I just have a quick question. How did you get to the $15?
we're coming up on that right
Oh,
now.
okay.
I'm glad you asked. So one of the things we did also is what are other jurisdictions doing, and where do we get that price point that says here's what is fair for our time. So looking at that, surrounding jurisdictions currently, we came up with 58 total that we know of in the state that are currently doing the exact same thing we're doing, whether that's in-house or through a third-party company. And each one of these, I highlighted the ones in yellow because the ones in yellow are jurisdictions around us. We have Othello, all of Grant County, Leavenworth, Wenatchee, Moses Lake, all of the Tri-Cities. All of those jurisdictions are either smaller or right around the same size. And all of those reports that they are receiving are starting at that $15 per report. And the only one that's really outside of that is our Spokane number that we have, which is the $19 per report. And I included that in Appendix B because they do it in-house, and they have a municipal code that is already laid out as to how they do that. And we would be hoping to adopt, with your guys' blessing, something very similar. And so that's why Spokane is adopted on there. And so that's, without throwing too much of a broad paintbrush on it, that's kind of industry standard for what other jurisdictions are charging, or another third-party company that would go out and do this, they would start at that $15 mark. So,
Thank you.
and then this here is just a representation of the previous slide. And what I did is we just put some blue marks on the map that shows what other surrounding jurisdictions are, and then I have where Yakima is on the star, and then Spokane I have pinned again because I've included that in the packet for your guys' review, because we would be proposing something similar with council's blessing. Councilmember Funk?
Well done. Yes.
I wanted to give some kudos for the fire department, the fire inspectors, that they sometimes catch flack for being perceived as anti-business, and this is not that. We discussed this in the Public Safety Committee, and most of the systems that we're talking about are complex systems installed by third-party vendors, and the inspectors are vendor inspectors who have specialties in particular systems. It's like having your Xerox guy come out and look at your Xerox machine.
That's correct.
They come from out of town. They're charging across the state of Washington. The fee is already rolled into the price they're charging to local Yakima businesses, and this is an opportunity to collect that fee and recover the cost of keeping this all together in a centralized information system.
That's correct. Thank you, ma'am.
I think it was a very well done presentation. Thank you.
I have another comment over here.
No, I'm sorry, Jim.
So out of the cities that were not highlighted for cost reimbursement, what's their approach? Are they just eating those costs right now? Is it something that they do?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Let's go back to that just so I can clarify that. So this whole list has a program that charges for reports, all 58. I just highlighted the ones that were around us as a representative of, like, I'm not going to compare us to Seattle, but I mean, it's a little more accurate to say we're a lot more like Moses Lake. So I just highlighted the ones that were on the east side of the mountains, kind of around us, that do it similar. But all of these jurisdictions on this list charge a fee for reports. And the majority of them start at that $15 mark and go up from there.
And on the side of the benefits, are we keeping track of, is there statistical data that proves that that those claims are being substantiated, that there's a decrease in fires, and that there's an increase in safety?
That's a great question. In fact, Inspector DeLoza had a situation just last month with the tournament coming into town with a high occupancy hotel, that I would like him to just relay one of the benefits that we've seen firsthand.
Good evening, Council. So what Tony was referring to kind of answer your question, is we want to make sure that the driving force behind this is public safety, and that's extremely important to our division, and it's the reason why we're here today. So what we had was, we did have a tournament that came to town, and a lot of people had reserved rooms in a local hotel, to which the fire alarm system was not operating properly. We were able to then follow up with that particular business and ensure that the alarm system was operating properly, and that whether they're residents of Yakima or people coming in to visit the city of Yakima, that we can do our best to ensure their safety. Just another quick example was a fire that we had not too long ago, where our fire crews were able to contain the fire to a specific room. It was an apartment complex, which could have spread and could have gone, put a lot of people out of homes for who knows how long. And that apartment complex had recently been inspected. There were hazards that were followed up on specifically on this sprinkler system. It just kind of comes full circle for us and reminds us why we're doing what we're doing. So just a couple of examples there. Hopefully that helps answer the question.
Well, I know that we track the information, so it should be able to be pretty tangible. We get presentations from the fire department on a monthly basis, so it seems like those benefits should be able to be tracked with numbers.
Another one of the benefits is the better the rating for undertaking these fire inspections, and then doing the follow-up, and then recording all the documentation. When the community rating system happens, the better rating we get, the lower the insurance rate is for all the businesses that are in the city. So they benefit directly by getting, you heard the first quarter, we got 100% rating, all those points. And so that's beneficial to us as we go through our next rating system. So all of the businesses will get a little bit lower insurance rate.
Councilmember Funk, did you have something? Oh, I thought I saw your hand.
No, I said my piece.
Okay. Thank you. I think we've
So
done.
thank you, gentlemen. So
Yes.
Council, there's no action you requested before you tonight. Normally, this would come before you during budget time to adopt in the coming budget year. We took an opportunity through the Public Safety Committee and then to Council. We're starting to gather that data on what the real costs are associated with recording those fees, and so that's why it came sort of out of sequence.
So I have a question. So these fees haven't been implemented yet?
No, and that's the purpose of coming before Council,
This
to
was
get your education, and then to get your approval to move it forward into the budget process.
Oh, can it be done before the budget process?
It can. It's not normally done, but as I'm saying that we're starting to collect that data on what the real time commitment. It's almost a half FTE. So at the with salary and benefits, the revenue would just about cover that.
But I think they're already doing the work.
They're already
free.
doing it, and it's being subsidized by the general fund.
Well, I'm in favor of collecting the fees sooner rather than later.
If that's council preference,
You
we
can
can
put
certainly.
that in the form of a motion or a direction.
I would make a motion to support the imposition of the processing of the inspection fees as expeditiously as possible, and according to the recommendations that we have just received.
Do we have a second? It fails for a lack of a second. Okay, let us move on. Next on the agenda is item 9, a report on the first quarter capital improvement projects. Bob Grosslear, acting chief engineer, will introduce this item. Gentlemen, we still have a long agenda to go through, so let
We'll
us
try to go
move
through
on.
it as quick as we can. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. The information that I will be providing this evening, and I'll try not to go too quick, and if you have any questions, let me know. But this is work that we have done on the project since the first of the year. So it says first quarter report, but it's pretty much up to date, the information that we have. First project, Garfield Elementary safety improvements. We're still looking at starting construction June 17th. That's the first Monday after school is out this year. And for the one-way streets, we distributed flyers today. We have a public meeting coming up at the school on May 29th, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, to discuss the project with the residents in the area, anybody in the city that is interested. And should we get positive feedback, we'll bring it to council for changing the one-way streets on Jerome and Fairbanks later in the year, probably in June. This happens to be a photograph on 6th Avenue looking towards Garfield School on your right. Shows some of the conditions that we are correcting. No curb and sidewalk right there on the right-hand side. It's not just for walking, but it also for storm drainage to keep the water away from the walking school children. Next project, McClure Elementary School. We're still working on the right-of-way on that, so there hasn't been much more action on that one since the first of the year. Next project is complete streets, sidewalks in the area or vicinity of several schools around town. We're still under design, and we have one, as a Prash has more right-of-way that's needed. That will probably be constructed in 2020, not 2019, but the other streets are slated to be constructed later this year. North First Street construction, revitalization phase 1 from N Street north to the interstate. Tappanee has started in March. They've done a lot of work out there. That shows the sewer that they're putting up near our street that's already in. The underground work has mostly been done as far as sewer and water replacement and improvements. That's another shot looking from our street to the south of the sewer and water placement. This is one piece looking from approximately Tamarack to the north. You can see we're on the west side of the roadway. Curb, gutter, and sidewalk in some of those areas has all been removed. We're working on one half of the road, Tappanee is, and we will be doing the storm drainage improvements, all the underground pipe, and then putting curb, gutter, sidewalk, irrigation, street lights, trees, tree grates, and those type of improvements along there on one side before flipping to the other side of the roadway. Phase 2, we are putting in for an we put in for an infra grant. I think we just started putting in for our, have a consultant that's putting together a build grant, another federal grant. We scored very good on the build grant last time. We were not successful, but we think it's a very good shot at getting that funding, which would save our TBD funds.
How much?
Overall,
The grant?
I think it was like $10 million is what the next amount would be to do from N Street down to MLK. Is that the question?
Phase 2 is 2.975 million.
No, just the grant. What were you?
The grant size, I believe, is like either $8 to $10 million. They've got a minimum size that we have to put in for. It's called build, B-U-I-L-D. I'm not sure what exactly the acronym is, but I can provide more information if you have another question later.
So at this point in time, we're putting in for a grant to obviate the need to use transportation benefit district funding. If we are able to do that, then there's more TBD projects that council could consider.
I think the question was how much is the grant request?
I believe the minimum is, last time it was $10 million, so we would build a large enough grant to equal that, and it may include a piece of like the east-west corridor, maybe on H Street or something else. I was talking with the consultant. We just started them on it this last week, so I'm still looking at the full details of that.
And when will we know that? End of year, is that?
Probably within a month we'll have a better idea for it, maybe even sooner, but I can provide that information to council.
Yeah, we want to know that as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Next thing is Cascade Mill redevelopment project. We're still working on the NEPA and working through that. We did have in mid-April, an open house and listening session for the east-west corridor. Looking for public feedback, mostly on the environmental process at this time. That just shows an overview of the project. Fruitvale, Fruitvale and River Road, we're still working on right-of-way at this time and the environmental documentation for that project. That would be a next year's project. Right next to that is River Road from 34th Avenue to 40th Avenue. Selin construction started May 8th, and they should be completed by late August. Been going underway, putting in sewer and water line in there. PP&L is moving their power poles out of the way, and we're doing some other utilities are putting some other overhead wires underground, not the power, but some of the other communication wires. That work is going well. There's been some. It's kind of interesting, juggling the public and the business, and keeping everybody safe all at the same time. So we're doing the best on that, and have been getting good feedback. So Cowiche Canyon Trail, we have a meeting scheduled, not quite scheduled, but we're looking for in mid-June to meet with Bike Pedestrian Committee representative, William O. Douglas Foundation, and the Cowiche Canyon Conservancy, our consulting engineer and staff, to hopefully finalize our right-of-way needs where we do and don't want to. We've been going back and forth a little bit on what exactly our rights are, but we want to be firm on that before we move ahead. Spring Creek Road near the Sozo Soccer Complex. We have that in 2 phases. The first phase is underway. That's from going along the Sozo area. That happens to show a piece right there on Sorensen. Sozo is to your right-hand side, their complex, and looking west on Torup roadway. That is, utilities are being put in there before we start rebuilding the roadway. This is looking north. Sozo would be to the left, and Congdon has Hopfield, I believe, there to the right, just so it shows some of the construction out there. TTC construction started late April, and he should be wrapped up early July. And he's been doing a very good job on accommodating access for Sozo participants. The 3-on-3 basketball tournament is coming up toward the end of June. And there's been several other tournaments in there too that they've been doing their best to keep that open for that during their construction period. Next piece, let's see. Water treatment plant intake improvements. They are currently applying for working in river permits. Fruitvale Canal, Nelson Dam improvements. They're working on the scope of work for design. On the right-hand side, I updated a little while ago that said construction start is 2021 likely. That's may or may not stick. It kind of depends on how things are going. I talked to Dave Brown on occasion, and sometimes it's solid and things are moving ahead. Other times it seems like they are, some other delays that push that back. So we'll keep you posted as best we can. Hathaway Street water line and wastewater line replacement started in January, and it was going along real well until we got some snows in February and early March, and that set us back a couple months, but that has been restarted, and they've been going great guns, and that should be completed this summer. Things are going well. Stormwater projects 2019. The first 3 projects listed are either complete or nearly so. Wheeler Excavation will be completing those this year. Talked with Randy Malloy today, and he said things are going real well, and they're more than halfway done with the total list. Last project listed is the North Side Alleyway Pavement Project. We just completed putting out for SOQ, Statement of Qualifications for an engineer. That's been completed. We're working on tying down an engineering firm to work on the design, and when we have that engineer company on board, we will identify which alleys will be slated for regrading and paving.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you.
Do we need a motion to accept? Or?
Nope, this is just an update.
I have one question, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
In the North Side Alleyway Pavement Project, it's been stated that 4,000 linear feet of alleyway would be paved this year, and that's of course after addressing the stormwater drainage issue. Do you have the number of the total amount of linear feet of all alleyways in that area that was identified?
Yeah, within that original scope of work, there's 15,000.
15,000.
So we'll be able to do about a third of that.
A
But the original scope of work was actually just to put in a chip seal across the road, which our refuge trucks would just tear that up in no time at all.
Right.
Plus, it didn't address storm drainage.
Exactly.
So that's why the cost has gone up, and that's why we're only doing a third at this time.
And may I ask, what is the, or maybe you don't have this yet, but it'd be good for us to know in that neighborhood area if there's going to be prioritization of certain streets or alleyways, certain alleyways, and or if the entryways will be prioritized, because that's really where a lot of the flooding happens for folks, is at the entryways.
Right.
So could you give any more detail at this time on this?
Yeah, I think one of the priorities we're looking at is where the multifamily units are. And so that's one of the things we take into consideration. But yes, the entranceway is another. We're just looking at all of the different conditions of the alleyways. I mean, they are in bad shape, but some are worse than others. And so we're just trying to figure out what best to approach first.
And is HLA doing cost estimations just for 2019's work?
Yes.
And what do we expect would be the timeline for the second and thirds of this project?
That would probably be the following year if we budget it as such, because that's, we're budgeting right now $500,000 just to do a third of the project.
Okay.
So overall, if we were to continue to go, it'd be $1.5 million for
Okay.
alleyways.
All right.
Any other questions? Hearing none. All right, Mr. Groom, I think we are ready for your financial first quarter financial report.
Good evening, Council. Councilman Funk, thank you for pointing out earlier that it's really important for financial information to come to Council. I couldn't agree more. The purpose of this presentation, I don't expect any action items. However, in order for you to govern in the absence of any information, you don't know what's going on in the city. And so I do want to make sure that we provide you with a progress report. Back in December, you adopted a budget. How are we doing after 3 months of actual activity? So I'm going to give you a progress report on revenues, expenses. We'll talk a moment about fund balance, and I'm looking towards the future. So let me start with the cash graph. Cash is just an indicator of the well-being of the city, and let me orient you to the graph. The scale on the left goes up to 100 million, and this is a 5-year graph. What this shows is the cash balance of the city across every fund, across all funds. Avoid the temptation, resist the temptation to say how much is general fund and all that, because there's many funds. But if you look at a macro level at how the city is doing over 5 years, I think you can clearly see that the cash balances in general are trending up. Mostly this is restricted cash because many of the funds outside of the general fund are restricted for different purposes. But as far as the strength of the city, this is the cash. Now contrast this with the next slide. This is our cash balance over 5 years. If we look at debt over 5 years. Now I toyed with the idea of making this a monthly graph, a quarterly graph, but Council, your decision points are annual. We come to you annually at the budget time. So really you can look over 5 years, and I agree that this is a lot of detail. I think all you want to know is that we know that there's a lot of detail that we're managing.
We like detail as well.
But at a macro level, I want you to know that there's been a trend. Cash has been decreasing. It's kind of leveled off, and of course we'll talk about it in the budget. Sorry? Debt has been decreasing. Thank you. Cash has been decreasing. Thank you. The packet that you receive every quarter, it's in your packet. I have perpetuated the same packet that you've always got. This is to supplement it, and if you look in the packet that you normally get, you would see after 3 months revenue is only at 12.7%. You'd expect to see 25. Normally, if you think 25% of the year, expenses are only 15.9%. So what are you to conclude? Let me just show you a couple things fundamentally, and it will make a lot of sense. If we look at property tax revenue as it comes in, this graph is monthly. It's a 12-month graph. The blue line shows you how property tax came in last year. And you can see, as you'd expect, during the months of April and October, it climbs quite a bit. In the other months, not so much. The light blue shaded area is this year's budget. Now, we did not do a monthly budget for property tax. What I did is I looked at the shape of the graph, the trend that as it came in last year, and I applied that to this year's budget. This year's budget, we've forecasted an extra $3 million in property tax. Do I worry if that's going to come in? I don't lose any sleep at night wondering whether the property tax is going to come in by the end of the year. And the reason is because the tax assessor assessed the value of the city, the tax collector collects it. Sure, there are some instances where we're not going to collect it if a house is in whatever situation, but ultimately we will. The red bar shows how we are doing so far. And we're doing better than last year. We're doing not quite as much as I predicted. However, at the end of the year, this one isn't so much a worry. Now the scale, the reason I show you this, if we're not worried about it, this is a $20 million by the end of the year. I think the budget is more in the 18, 19 point something. The next graph I'm going to show you is sales tax. The sales tax graph is on a scale of 35 million. This is our single largest revenue source. And trending it in about the way that it came in last year, you can see that this year the sales tax is coming in right exactly as it was last year. Now the little blue shady area, by the end of the year, we're hoping for an extra $800,000 because we budgeted that much of an increase. So far, we're off track by about $200,000, but when you think about the first 4 months, we just received our April remittance. That's on a 2-month lag from the state. That means that's for the February sales. That's when people were buying what? Snow shovels and de-icer, right? So I'm almost relieved that we're on track, and then let's see what the rest of the year brings us. I keep city manager informed on these and several of the other ones. I'm bringing you the most material because this kind of gives you the macro picture of how the city's doing.
So you said, I have a question. So you said we are on track to increase that sales tax revenue by $800,000 this year, or we are not?
We budgeted an increase of $800,000.
Are we on track to meet that?
We're off track by about $200,000 after the weakest part of our year, I would say. Yes. But to be clear, I want to make sure I'm delivering the bad news as well as the good news. Yeah, we're under what I would have forecasted at this point in the year. So we're
based on last year at the same
correct,
time.
Correct. And I wasn't here for last winter. Is it fair to say that it's going to trend the same? Probably not. It's just my best guess. Thank you for asking. The next graph is water revenue, and there is just very little news on this. The scale on this, this is our third largest funding source. Now, this is only water. It's not irrigation. It's not refuse. It's not wastewater. We track each of those separately. So why show you this? Well, it gives you assurance that we're on track, and it's giving you information that we are on staff. You know, there's nothing for you to do. You have to make sure that we are watching the business, and we are. So there's not much news on that one.
So it looks like there's also a budgeted increase there too.
There is. There is. And I'm not sure, and you could ask me if it's rate or if it's volume, and I can't remember the answer. It could be a little.
They adopted a 5-year rate, so it's
It's just a rate that increase that we.
And as we add more metered customers through the population growth, some of it's going to be volume, and it's a complex, right? See, the city manager's keeping on top of me here. Good accountability. The next graph I'd like to share with you is lodging tax. Lodging tax is a touch under both last year and this year's budget. We're running about 3.5% down. And again, this is during the winter months. This isn't too newsworthy. We've added one new hotel, and we've got another one going to open up soon, but that's adding supply. It's not really adding demand. When we expand our convention center, that'll be an increase that we're doing for demand. Ma'am.
Okay, the lodging tax, as far as I can see, it's exactly right on your projection there, but you said it was low because there's less occupancy in the winter months, so you're talking about that the slope of that line in the winter months is not as much as in the later months. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, but the red line is 96.5% of the blue line. So we are under, but it's so slight, it's hard to see. I'm just trying to be honest is all.
Okay. All right. I mean, that's pretty small.
Very good. So you feel informed and briefed on that one? Let me
Yes.
show you another revenue. Now, I'm sorry, let me back up just a touch. Notice that the scale on this graph is only $2 million. The total revenue that we expect by the end of the year is about 1.6 million. So we've gone from the sales tax and the property tax to much less material revenues. Same is true on this one. Now, if I showed you REIT 1 and REIT 2, I could show you different graphs. They'd be identical. We get the same exact allocation from the state. So we are just a touch low of both budget and last year. But the difference, how much are we under budget? $20,000. Not very much. Numbers become kind of small. But it's
refund comes in quite slowly, doesn't it, as well?
The way that you can see the slope of the blue line, that's how we got it last year. It's kind of even.
So last quarter.
But as a quarterly report, you would like to have this information monthly to see how it's coming in. So that's my purpose in trying to give you some supplementary material. I could use some feedback, and if this is useful to you. Before I show you two other graphs, let me pose a question. What happens when revenue comes in higher? I ask this question a lot. I use this during our budget time because I remind staff, if we get more revenue, we cannot spend it. You as a council have adopted a budget fund by fund by fund. That's our spending authorization. If we have more revenue, in order to spend it, it has to come to council to get an additional appropriation. So now, let me show you a couple funds where we're getting more revenue. Transit Benefit District, I think we call that TBD, $20 per car plate. My wife and I contributed $40. The program started, as you can see, last year. That little blue line only started in, July or August. And so we really don't yet have a fully complete year. We budgeted $655,000, and the red line kind of gives you the idea that it's going to come in better. In order for us to do anything about that, we will be coming to you in a couple of meetings to talk about that.
But you also have adopted a discrete project list, and there was a little bit of a cushion in there to accommodate inflation over time. But this is looking like we'll be able to kind of recalibrate and maybe move forward faster on some projects or potentially add some projects. But we'll want to do a full analysis on that. But the good news here is that the revenue is coming in really strong.
Right, and internally we've been looking at that monthly with Public Works and City Managers so that we're kind of thinking ahead a little bit. Here's an interesting one. This is investment revenue. Again, the scale is pretty small. We're only talking, we budgeted in the neighborhood of 800 and some thousand. This is the investment policy that we just revised, and so we've changed our strategy a little bit, but by changing our strategy, we're diversifying, we're changing the maturities that we're purchasing. When I came to the city, we had a lot of zero coupon investments. We weren't getting cash monthly, and so the investments that we're reinvesting, now we're getting cash every single month, depending on, they each come in once every 6 months. So this is going to be increasing. Now, we will not be coming to you asking for more reason to spend it, because a lot of this is just supplementing all of the city's cash. And so we're just exercising better cash management. Fair enough?
And I'll just say, I've been watching this very carefully. Our investment portfolio is about 20% general fund. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at $800,000 more investment revenue than we expected. 20% of that will be in the general fund.
Okay.
But we're not asking to spend it. We're saying put that in the reserve.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to give you another compliment that I was going to complain that the investment instruments were abbreviated and not transparent, but then when I went down, I found that it was fully spelled out, and I think you call them vendors that they come from. I think that's really good because I think there are some members of the public who want to look at that.
Right, using military terms on civilians is bad form. Using financial terms for non-financial people, I should not do that.
Yeah.
Keep me honest on this. So, tracking our monthly expenses. The rest of this presentation doesn't have any interesting graphs. For the next quarter, I would like to find some. I would like to invent some. However, I want to make sure that I'm being clear on what the city is doing. The first quarter of the of the year. We do manage by department. City manager has instructed every department in the city to come meet with the finance department, and we do that. We did it at the beginning of the year, and we meet quarterly. For each of them, that might be a 1-hour tedious meeting. For the finance department, it's 20. It's fairly time consuming, and yet, even in the first quarter, we are finding things that we can correct. If there's some old POs that need to be deleted, and that'll free up an encumbrance, so that we are making sure that department by department we're managing. At the beginning of the presentation, I pointed out that expenses, they're only at 15.9%. A lot of that is because citywide, a lot of that's capital funds. In the operating funds, what is most of our expenses? It's salaries and benefits, and we do see that pretty much 1/12, except for things like seasonal parks. So the city is a complex animal. It's got a lot of funds, and in order for us to convey accountability, the only thing that we can do is assure you that we're meeting department by department, looking at their budget line by line. Yeah. We do have a couple things that we're watching. We're watching revenues. As I mentioned, the first quarter sales tax and lodging tax. In February, we did have quite a bit of materials and contract expenses on snow and ice. I think it's pretty common to have police department, if they're having vacancies, they're also having recruitment and overtime costs. So we're having to watch those lines and see if we need to course correct. And we're watching. We're also some of our budget review meetings involve long-term questions. Staff is really looking at next year. What are we going to be doing next year and following? Are we going to be taking care of vehicle replacement? Are we going to be taking care of our debt? What about fund balance? This is an important question. You have made it your number one priority, and I would love to have a graph, and I don't have a really good explanation, but I can tell you this: if you have a balanced budget and we manage to it, you will have no change in fund balance. And honestly, the seasonality of our revenues and of our expenses, it's a roller coaster. So your best accountability on us is just to make sure that we're managing the budget and that we're tracking.
You will have no change in the fund balance that was projected when you adopted your budget, because you've given us a target to hit the 16.7% in reserve by 2022.
Right, and yes, and there is no monthly graph I can do. Sure. Very good.
Thank you. All right. Good.
Okay, so planning for the future, and our finances next steps are going to be to bring to you the prior year carry forwards that's on your agenda coming up in the next couple of meetings.
Okay.
Same thing with course corrections.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
I do have questions though. What steps are we taking as far as making the budget and getting back on track as our number one priority? What steps are we being presented with, or what actions are being taken as far as staff goes to make sure that that's our priority and that we're
You've adopted a budget that had some reductions. You have given us a target of 2022 to come in at 16.7%. My recollection is that our anticipation is that this year will be at 14.5%. So we are looking at some enhanced revenue. There's a few things that you did tonight, for example, by hopefully moving forward with the fire inspection fee revenue. That's a little bit. You agreed to sell a property tonight. That's $300,000 of revenue that wasn't budgeted. There's going to be some investment revenue that's going to be out of that $800,000 increase, that 20%. So we're monitoring that, and we will come forward during the 2020 budget process, and we will say to council, we recommend a flat budget, which is only taking into consideration inflationary factors and collective bargaining agreements, and no new expenditures. So we're monitoring, we're tracking, we're looking at new revenue, and we're holding the line on difficult decisions that council made, including adopting a budget that has less travel and training for all departments. So,
What about dollars that are allocated for positions that are vacant? How does that play out in the departments?
So, in a couple of ways. A lot of times, a vacant position is held vacant for a period of months to do a payout for when somebody leaves when they have a lot of vacation time. It's not uncommon for us to have a payout of $20,000 or $30,000 when somebody leaves. They've been with the city for a long time. They've banked up vacation, and we need to pay them out. So those positions are often held vacant for several months in order to recoup that cost, because we, generally speaking, don't budget for payouts. We also, in departments, for example, like police, where they have a lot of vacancies, we use some of that salary savings to cover overtime costs, because they have to have full coverage, and without the staff numbers, we authorize overtime to pay for that.
And there's also
Now,
recruiting costs.
Wait, pardon?
Recruiting costs and testing.
And recruiting costs, yes. But generally speaking, those vacant positions, if that money isn't reallocated to cover a payout or recruitment or overtime, it gets reverted back to the general fund, and that also helps our ending fund balance.
And so do you make those on a case, do you make that decision on a case-by-case basis?
Yes.
Okay. And how often are we actually experiencing any of that money going back to general funds?
Every year.
Every year.
Every year we have money that reverts back to the general fund. Yes.
From those dollars.
Yes.
Is it significant? I mean, 'cause
It's
those,
somewhere between. It's generally speaking between 2 and 3% of what the total expenditure authority that council granted to a department. That's what it's been recently. As we continue to tighten up, that 2 to 3% might decline, but that's what it's been historically.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Thank you, Steve. Next on the agenda is item 11, a discussion on E-Verify. City County Procurement Manager Sue Ownby will introduce this item. Sue.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council.
Good evening.
I was asked to give you a brief history of our E-Verify program, since purchasing administers the program, the contractor program for the city. So first, a little refresher of what E-Verify is. E-Verify is the federal government's free internet-based system that any employer throughout the United States can use to electronically compare an employee's I-9 information to records available to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the Social Security Administration. Though required by the federal government on their federal contracts, it's voluntary for all other state and local governments to use, unless a state has enacted it for their entire state, which Washington has not. In May of 2010, I was asked to present to Council general information on the E-Verify system and how it worked, which I did do. There was a motion to adopt E-Verify that failed at that time, 4-3. A year later, in May of 2011, Council directed legal staff to prepare a resolution for the next meeting that then passed 4-2. So in June of 2011, Council adopted Resolution R 2011-77, which was attached to your electronic packets, directing the City of Yakima's participation in the federal E-Verify program, and that passed 4-3. For the City of Yakima, the requirements are that the contractor must fill out an E-Verify declaration and return it with their bid packet. And that is, there was some requirements of when it is required. It's required for general services over $2,500 and public works over $5,000. Off-the-shelf items and merchandise is excluded, as are contracts that take less than 30 days to complete. The vendor must use it on all new hires while the contract is in effect. It also does not apply to professional service contracts. So the actual policy that was then created is the Administrative Policy 2100. So is there any questions about how it works or how it's going, or?
Well, no.
So I do. How it affects us. How is it affecting local businesses from not being able to participate in bidding for a job?
I have received some complaints over time, just by virtue of being a municipality and doing governmental contracting. We expect a lot from our vendors. They must compete against each other and go through our entire bid process. They must sign a contract. They must obtain a certificate of insurance with $2 million limits. They must have a Washington State contractor's license that we verify through L&I. We go into the Department of Revenue account and we verify that they have a workers' comp account and that they're not delinquent in that. They must pay prevailing wages and file intents and affidavits. They must have a valid federal UBI number that we verify. They must have a city business license if they're doing business within the city. And sometimes they must provide a bid bond, a payment bond, performance bonds, and we require them to register with MRSC's Small Works roster in order to do construction work with them. And then if we're spending federal money, those requirements almost double because the feds have a lot of other requirements that we must take care of.
So if we're spending federal money, is this mandated that they go through the E-Verify process?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
If we're spending federal dollars, is it mandated that we would still have to use the E-Verify?
No, it's actually not, because it's our contract. Madam Mayor.
State governments have a waiver.
Yes.
Madam. Yes, please.
I appreciate Councilman White's questions, and thank you for the presentation on this, staff. I was actually the council member who brought this to the agenda with the support of the council for consideration and discussion. This subject was actually brought to my attention over 6 months ago, previous to the former assistant manager Cortez's departure here, and as well I've had a conversation with Miss Sue as well. And there isn't a whole lot of research and statistics done around before and after an implemented E-Verify policy. But what we do know by exercising common sense is that folks either have additional layers of red tape policies to engage in practice, or they have less, or they have more. And I believe that this policy here is another layer of red tape for businesses who wish to engage in contracting with the city. And so I brought this up during the Economic Development Committee so that we could talk about this as potentially opening up economic opportunities here locally for some of the smaller and local businesses. I would like to also have a resolution before us before asking the full council to take a vote on anything. But I was my attempt in having this on today's agenda was so that you all could have the opportunity to ask questions and we can have this discussion. But I, at this time, move that we direct staff to bring back a resolution rescinding the federal E-Verify program resolution passed in 2011 to the next council business meeting.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to bring back a resolution rescinding the E-Verify. Would you like to speak to your motion?
I've said enough.
Councilmember White?
Yeah, I would like to take a look at it. I don't think that I don't support any additional burdens on employers or extra mandates that are not federally mandated. If this is something that people like to take up, I think they should take it to the next level, and it's going to be a state thing. But since it's not a state mandate, I don't support it.
Okay. Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Funk.
Well, I was going to speak against.
Well, you may.
Okay. I'm concerned that the advocacy information in this agenda item all dates back from 2011, and when we're talking about electronic data systems, we really need to be more up to date in assessing what we're talking about. So I don't feel that I can make a decision on this on the basis of the information that's in this agenda packet. I absolutely believe that our community needs comprehensive federal immigration reform.
Point of order.
Yes.
Comments must be germane to the discussion, and that is not germane.
I think the point is well taken.
I don't need to talk anymore.
All right. Do you have a comment?
I do.
I do. I opposed this when it first came to the council many years ago as far as implementing E-Verify. I still feel that way, so I will be supporting your motion. If there are no other comments, we can take roll call.
Coffee?
Yes.
Cousins?
No.
Gutierrez?
Yes.
Funk?
No.
White?
Yes.
It passes 3-2. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. It now goes to other business. The agenda item is number 12. Item number 12, other business. Are there any council items council members would like to discuss under other business? Councilmember Funk?
I would like to make a motion to add to the agenda of the next meeting a discussion of the city's policy about the ICE flights at the YAKIMA airport.
Do we have a second? It fails for a lack of a second. I guess that concludes that discussion. Are there any other items that would like to have council member input? No. Hearing none, I will entertain a motion for adjourn.
Madam Mayor, I move that we adjourn to the special council meeting on May 28th at 5:30 here in the council chambers.
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 We are adjourned.